Hi there, this is Matt Heffernan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the XCI game engine, as I often am, and today specifically about the new release of beta version 0.8. Now, what really prompted this was a few bug fixes and other improvements that I've made to XCI over time, and the initial way I had of sort of doing a backhanded, sort of sneaky way of showing off some of these new features was through my last video. If you haven't seen it, I'll be linking to it at the end. But this is it, and it turned out to be the fastest gaining in views that I've ever had. The biggest first day that any of my videos have ever had, and for probably some nefarious reasons, because I intentionally made the title and the initial description, as we'll see down here, very clickbaity, or at least as clickbaity as I would allow myself to be, and of course totally dishonest. There was no I am not actually creating King's Quest V for the Commander X16. Not that I wouldn't be open to it, and not that I don't think we could make a pretty decent version of King's Quest V using XCI, but I'm definitely not doing that, mainly because nobody's paying me to, and I'm not about to license that from Activision Blizzard at this point. Even Ken Williams is not in a position to commission such a thing, as I had implied there. And we can see also that this is my most disliked video of all time. I've never had, I think, more than one dislike in any video. So it's not disconcerting necessarily, but I should come out with the fact that this was done with the best of intentions. And probably the thing that you're wondering, if you've seen this, which if we sort of skip to it, or I could actually just play the game here from from my machine. And here it is. Oh, I can even make it bigger. So it looks like the intro. I got the Real Sierra opening and everything, and then our old friend Rick Astley starts dancing in, and yeah, it's a full Rickroll demo using XCI. Everything is entirely within the XCI engine. Everything that is done within this can be done with any game with XCI. And of course, we can see here, I go into the new game, and there's the famous cottage scene with Graham in the water, and Cedric and the wizard just looking on, not caring. And of course, Rick dances away. So there you get the plug at the end for the XCI itself. So how do I do this? Because I never had anything even approaching full motion video, and this is still technically not full motion video. There's no sound synchronization, and we are talking about very quick frame loops. But obviously this is a fair number of pixels. If I go back to that new game again, you can see here, yeah, it's a lot. This is a pretty big sprite, as it were. And you can see I'm even going off the background, which you can do actually. Sprites aren't technically limited to that background area. You can totally have a sprite go over the text area. You could have it go over the menu. You could have it go wherever you want. But that's that's just some of the stuff you can do. So how did I actually do that? Well, this is really enabled by some very late breaking things and things that are new to version 0.8. And if you look here in the release notes, you'll notice here that the new features is the title screen may use up to 9 custom palette offsets for sprites and or tiles. Wow, that's like a lot, right? Well, yeah, so we had a special palette just for the Rick Astley animation, and a separate palette for the background. So that King's Quest title screen background, I had converted that to 16 color using a palette optimized for that, and then the same thing for the Rick Astley loop. And so I was able to use one of those 9 custom offsets for doing that. And in fact, by putting a specific location, which I'll show you in a minute, I was able to have that same palette offset available after the game started so that we could have Rick make a return appearance. And this was mainly enabled by the Hex Sprites tool. So now within the SDK for XCI, besides the actual program that parses all the source code and generates the binaries that you load into the X16 along with the engine itself, that you also have these other tools that help you generate some of the text for those source files. In the previous release, I had that decimal ASCII converter where it could take a string and put out a bunch of decimal ASCII values so that it's easier to do tiles commands. That's how you do the credits, for instance, in Cavi's Quest, without having to look up the index for each letter that I'm putting, that I'm like sort of emblazoning on the screen. I'm able to do that a lot more easily with that tool. And so Hex Tiles and Hex Sprites takes a bitmap that is proportioned properly for just having a bunch of tiles or sprites. Of course, tiles are 8 by 8 and the sprites are 16 by 16. But for Rick to be bigger than 16 by 16, I needed to be able to not just have like one sprite per frame. There's like a whole bunch of sprites that are changing with each frame, and to make sure that I'd be able to do that without going crazy. So at the very start, now of course every bit of this tool chain that I'm using, it's all open source. I am a big proponent of open source. I run Linux, and I run as much open source as I possibly can, especially within Linux. I do support Windows with XCI, so the release is out there, but I use the MinGW compiler, so I'm still using an open source compiler to build Windows executables. So this was the clip that I had taken from the original video. There he is, Rick. So just very quick, just 2 cuts so that I have the sort of cowboy thing here and then the close-up, and just so that I could make a GIF that would go between those two. And then in GIF format, I'm able to import it into GIMP and be able to mess around with it. So putting that GIF into GIMP, what you get is you can see here, it's a 59 frame GIF. And what I'm actually using are the first 30 frames where it's this cowboy shot of Rick. The close-up, I just don't have enough space. You still have very, very tight constraints within XCI. It is extremely compact after all. And so I could only really fit into video memory those 30 sprite frames, or rather 30 video frames of Rick. And you can see here GIMP just creates this as a series of layers as he goes through. And so, this is the original 256 color palette here. If you want to make your own Rick Astley, these are the colors you'll need. There's a lot of red. That's not too surprising, right? So what I did is created a 16 color version of that with GIMP and then laid out all the slides one on top of each other. So here now I have this sort of film strip that you could create a GIF, not a GIF, but a GIF-like loop, where instead of going from between the cowboy and the close-up, it's just doing the cowboy and then doing that same cowboy in reverse, so he's just sort of jiving back and forth. And that's it. And so these are the only 16 colors you need for Rick. And again, a lot of sort of a dusty red in the middle. And that's it. So you can see here, if I zoom in a lot, you can see that's as much detail as you can get. So you can see also here that this is a 64 pixel wide. So that means what I'm really getting down to is that each frame is 4 sprites by 5 sprites. And I have 30 different frames. So I am changing effectively 20 different sprites each animation frame. So I want to be able to go have 20 sprites be defined as this, and then change to this, then change to that. And that's easily enough accomplished with the hex tiles tool. So now when you build XCI, you will see in the SDK tool subdirectory that deck ASCII is still there, but hex sprites and hex tiles are there. And when you run it against a raw data bitmap, so this rickroll.data, that's that raw data bitmap version of this guy right here with all 30 frames. And that gets, so when you export that with GIMP, you get the .data file and the .data.pal file. And both of those end up getting converted, so you get the .hex file and the .pal.hex. So that first .hex file are the actual tiles. So then it gets into looking like, whoops, let me go to over here, and here we can see these are those Rick Astley sprites. And it's kind of hard to see what they look like there, but you kind of have to go on faith. And then you'll notice here at the end, so that I could keep the numbering, because here the hex sprites even adds the comments for you. So hey, this is sprite 0, this is sprite 1. So this is that first corner, the upper left corner of that first frame in there, and going all the way down, and so that I'm using 480 frames. Now with XCI, at any given point, including the title screen, you only have 500 frames available. And so here I limited it to 480 frames, so 0 through 479, and then frame 480 is the mouse cursor. That's the only other sprite that I'm defining for this whole game. And so that's that's your big drawback right there for having sophisticated animation like this, where it's 30 frames a second and 20 sprites to make up something that really eats into what you're trying to do. And then the actual palette goes into this other hex file. If we just sort of look at it here, you can it just says, yep, here's your 12-bit palette for rickroll.data, and you can see there's those 16 colors that are used in this little film strip. So I was able to add that to my initial palette file. I put it in offset 3 because offset 0 is your default palette, and this is just the bog standard X16 default palette, which I use for all the menu items and everything like that. Then offset 1 is when you load the title screen, will be that bitmap backgrounds palette. So we need to leave space for that. And then I could start using this next one, but another sort of hidden feature of XCI that I don't really have documented is if your your first zone is small enough, some of these custom palettes here in indices 2 through 10 will stick around if you don't overwrite them. But when you do overwrite them, they're gone. But that zone, I only have 2 levels. So that first level with the cottage, and that outro level that has the plug for XCI, which is this guy right here. That's still left behind. And that's what allows us to have that extra palette offset, because those 2 levels have their bitmap palettes overwritten there, and there's Rick. So Rick stays at offset 3. And then I'm able to go into that title screen and do a whole lot of animation. Here you can see I'm setting up the sprite frame, so I've got sort of this introductory loop where I'm using up all the animation, all the frames, and going all the way from 0 to 460 for that corner, and then the opposite corner 19 through 479. So all 480 of those sprite frames are accounted within this initial setup. And then here you can see I position them just off screen so that then I can start moving them on, and that all happens here after 480 ticks. So we're waiting 8 seconds. That's how long it takes to play that fake fanfare, and then of course those famous drums kick in, and then it comes in, and you can see here I then after it moves after it goes through that full cycle, I switch the frames so that then it goes backwards back to frame 20 at that beginning, and then again to from 0 to 460 and so on. So I'm able to go back and forth until I hit the point where I'm starting to run out of space of animation that I can put in the title screen. So then I end up shortening the loop here instead of going back and forth, because again you can only have 31 frames in a sprite frames command, so I have to use a lot of sprite frames commands to go back and forth. And then I have here this singular one that goes through that whole loop and cuts out sort of the very beginning, so that you see here you go from 440 down to 160 and back up again. You don't go all the way down to 0 anymore. And that's good enough. That gets you a good chunk of the little dance to go back and forth. And then with that, he just moves the rest of the way off screen, and that's the end of the title screen. And then you can see you're in the zone. That first level that you load is level.xci, and then I have the cottage. I play a version of the music with no intro, and then I'm just doing that shortened loop there, just for the sake of simplicity, so that I'm able to just have him do that short little loop, just sort of pop in and hang out, so that here so a second in he starts moving, and then as he's moving in, the text again pops up with the famous lyrics, and then it waits for him to just eventually here he gets to a spot, and then he stops moving, but he still keeps cycling through for 240 more frames, and we wait because each frame is 2 ticks, so we wait for that, and then we automatically go to the next level, which is that outro level. And that's it. That's the whole game. There's not a whole lot to it. So that's kind of how I structure the game. So the next sort of big feature in there, which wasn't in, it's actually in an earlier version of XCI, but I wanted to finally highlight that in a video to show how we can do that, something a little more obvious than what we've done before. The opening theme of Cabby's Quest actually takes advantage of this, and this is here. If we look at the original track here in Deflamask, you can have an intro section to your music and then a loop section. And when I had done the music video for the XCI tutorial, this was not possible yet. But this is a standard part of Deflamask, and subsequently the VGM file format that you export to that XCI takes in is you can set up a section or a set of sections in your matrix that only plays through once, and then at the end of a section you can say, all right, at this point I'm going to do a loop back to this pattern, and here it says at the end of one I'm looping back to the beginning of one, and that's what it does. It just does this that little intro bit, and I'm only using 7 voices for it because I am lazy and not a good musician. So this is the best I could do in a small amount of time. I didn't want to spend forever on this, and it's my completely unlicensed version of Never Gonna Give You Up, the intro to Never Gonna Give You Up for the Yamaha YM2151. And so that's kind of neat. So then I have this version, and then I have the no intro version, which basically it takes out the loop back to the middle and also that first section. So it's then just this second section, and then by default it will just loop that over and over again. So that's pretty much how I did it. There's some neat new features that if you've gone through the tutorial, there's some additional things that you can make your game richer and more interesting. If you go to the README file, I have it's all, of course, that's on GitHub, and the GitHub link, of course, as always, will be in the description, and you'll be able to go through, and I have some of those new features. They are definitely documented in there now. So say if you go into the tiles hex file, I have a little section here about here's how you use hex tiles to generate some tiles for you, for instance. And that's it. So I apologize for the bit of his subterfuge and the trolling, or clickbait, all the bad things about the internet that I have just shamelessly used to again promote XCI and my channel, which, of course, by the way, if you haven't, please do subscribe and like the video. I liked my own video here. I usually don't do that, but if I start getting dislikes, I want to sort of tip the scales in my favor. And if you really want to help out, I do have a Patreon now. There's not a whole lot going on there yet, mainly because I don't have any patrons, and I don't really have the real rewards set up yet. But even at the basic level, you'll be able to get pre-release on the videos for just $1 a month, and even have your name just for $1 a month. I'll slap your name at the end of the video, and if it's one of these verbal videos, I'll probably just call you out if you want. However you want to do it, that's fine. And then, of course, all the way up to that master level, where if you want, I will create a game for you, whatever you want. So it's there's a lot of difference, and this is how we're going to be financing Cavi's Quest, in addition to a Kickstarter. And but these levels do apply also to my other games, specifically Chase Vault. If you do the say the physical relationship level for $50 a month, then basically anything I create, I'm going to make anything that's significant enough. I'm going to create a boxed version. I'm going to ship it out. Even the open source stuff like Chase Vault, I will be creating, if I get enough patrons or people buying it on the Kickstarter, I will be creating a big box version of Chase Vault, in addition to Cavi's Quest. Of course, those will be sold separately. Cavi's Quest will be a bit more because that will be a copyrighted material, but Chase Vault, basically, I just want to be able to break even with the materials on that. So there you go. That's what's going on. That's what's going on with XCI, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And I will again talk to you later. Hey, the bell! Don't forget the bell. You can click the bell and get notified for the next one. All right. Thanks. Bye bye.